Welcome to 3 Books with Neil Pasricha, where each chapter we uncover and discuss the 3 most formative books of an inspiring individual. We believe books change lives, and that's why we are the only podcast in the world by and for book lovers, writers, makers, sellers, and librarians. Thanks so much for joining us. I remember the first day I went back to school in 3rd grade. We all gathered around on this kind of old dusty green carpet, and we sat around Mrs. Stella Dorsman as she asked us all, "So, where did you go this summer?" And people said, "I went to my cottage. I played in my backyard." And she said, "You know where I went? Do you know where I went this summer? I went to Japan. I went to Australia. I went to the Congolese jungles. I went to the waterfalls of South America. I went to the moon, and I even went to Mars." And as her eyes slowly widened, she stared kind of around the room, and she dropped the bomb. She's like, "Through books. I read about all those places, and it felt like I was there." And I remember Mrs. Dorsman kind of lit a little fire inside me that day. It was like, you could travel through books. Books are places. There was an enthusiasm that she had about books. You know, when she would read us a book, I remember about an egg hatching, she'd cover up the cover of the book with brown pieces of paper. And she'd be like, "I don't want you guys to see what's going to happen, what's going to come out of the egg." You know, she'd always kind of get this excitement. Well, what do you do if you don't have a Mrs. Dorsman? What do you do if you don't have a teacher that gets you ignited about the passion of books? Well, these days, according to the New York Times, who published an article on August 3rd, 2018, they say YouTube stars are turning viewers into readers. New York Times, yes, it says booktubers are becoming new celebrities. Booktubers, what is booktubing? What is a booktuber? Well, it says at conferences like BookCon or Y'all Fest, a young adult literary festival, everyone walking around is a booktuber subscriber. According to YouTube, the booktubing community has gotten over 200 million views, and compared to this time last year, this is the amazing thing, engagement is up 40%. One of the booktubers profiled, these passionate booktubers turning viewers into readers. One of the people profiled is Ariel Bissett, Ariel Bissett, Bissett. She's got hundreds of thousands of subscribers on YouTube. She's heavily quoted throughout this article, and she says BookTube is a haven for people who never felt cool or popular with their reading. And it teaches a passion and love for books. Kind of like the passion and love I got from my 3rd grade teacher. So, welcome to another chapter of 3 Books. We are actually going up to Ottawa, Ontario, Canada, Canada's capital, home currently of Justin Trudeau and the Canadian government. And we're going to go to the University of Ottawa, and we're going to sit down with Ariel Bissett. We're going to talk about what is booktubing. How does BookTube even work? How can you grow a YouTube channel to hundreds of thousands of subscribers? We get deeper then, and we talk about why you should start a book medicine cabinet and why scientifically it's important for your brain to reread books. Then we go a level deeper. We talk about how do you reinvent yourself? How do we all fight for independent thinking in an online echo chamber that we're all kind of in more and more? And how do we navigate loss? This comes up as a theme throughout Ariel's 3 books. Loss of trust, of community, of memory, of relationships. And I hope you find, like me, that it's just a huge pleasure listening to Ariel. She's in show business, right? Millions of people are watching her booktubing videos every single day, month, and year. So come with me to Ottawa. Sit down beside Ariel and I, and let's enjoy Chapter 13 of 3 Books. Hi, Ariel.
Hello, Neil.
Thank you so much for agreeing to sit down and chat with me here at the University of Ottawa campus, right?
Yeah,
Where are we? You've brought me into your home here.
I have brought you straight into the heart of the English department here at the University of Ottawa, where I'm currently doing my master's in English literature. So I thought it was fitting. We're going to talk about books, and we're in this really nice seminar room.
I like that. Yeah, we walked by like a big signed poster by Margaret Atwood when we walked in here, and every professor's door on the way down to this boardroom has the classic collage of a million cartoons.
Yep, they have cartoons. We have concrete poetry. Everybody has got quotations posted on the door. It's very much an English
I
department.
feel and there was just this really funny poem which I can't recite, but over the sink where we just got our waters before we sat down, like this rhyming couplets of like how to do the dishes.
Yep.
It's so funny.
We take it seriously. We're really proud.
I feel like there's a book in the Professor Door. Imagine a book just called Professor Doors.
Yeah, no, you've got potential. You've got your next book idea. I would get it.
Ideas are so
and
cheap.
8 other people would too.
exactly. So it's beautiful here. It's a nice warm day in
Thank God.
Ottawa. And I really appreciate you chatting with me about your 3 most formative books. But before we do, you are the first ever booktuber on 3 books.
Oh, an honor. Hello.
Yes, you're the first ever booktuber. And I know that you like to start some of your shows with a Twitter poll.
Yes.
Because I heard you say once in one of your interviews, it helps ground the conversation.
Yes.
Right. So I did that. I did a Twitter poll.
I am so excited that you did that. And I want to know what you asked everyone.
I asked everyone, I said, so do you know what a booktuber is?
Oh, no.
And do you want to guess at what percent of people knew what a booktuber was?
You see, this is super. I'm so. No, I'm going to guess like 40% of people knew. They knew what a booktuber was.
And you have to know that this is also like my specific Twitter community.
Yeah, obviously.
Whatever that means, good or bad.
Specific grounding.
Okay.
But you're a very bookish person and you're online. I'm going to change it to 30% of people knew what it was.
Are you going to go down?
Yeah, I'm going to go down.
Oh, I thought you were going to go up.
No, I'm going to go down 30%.
Okay. Well, the correct answer is 19%.
Oh, that's terrible.
Said that they knew what a booktuber was. So
I'm not doing a good enough job.
no, it's not you.
I need to spread it more.
I think it was probably 0% a few years ago. So you've gone
that
up.
is true.
Think about how many people listen to podcasts. It's probably like around the same number.
That's very true.
So for the 81% of us, could you share what is a booktuber?
Yes.
And then also could you describe the ecosystem of booktube? I'm like waving my arms here.
Yes.
The ecosystem of booktubing, the solar system. Like what does it look like? Who are the players? What are you doing and why?
Yeah, so it is a newer phenomenon. I think most people in the bookish world have heard of book bloggers, people that are reviewing books on their book blog. It's an important and has been for a long time an important part of the publishing ecosystem, right? Getting those books that we are writing or publishing into the hands of readers who then review it. But a few years ago, about 8-ish years ago, some people started reviewing books on YouTube. So that was the pure essence of what was happening. It was people reviewing books. That was the gem that started it all, the spark
Was there
point.
a specific person?
I can't find, no one can find.
It's not like Paris Hilton claiming that she invented the selfie. There's no one that says like, I was
Which
the original.
maybe she did. I wouldn't take that away from Paris
Someone threw
Hilton.
a selfie of George Harrison up from like the 1960s.
And the whole point is that like self-portraiture is a form of selfie, right? But anyway.
Yeah.
I can't like point to the exact person that started booktubing, but there was very few people that were doing it.
And it was 8 years ago, you said.
And it was 8 years
So
ago.
it's still pretty late in the internet.
Yeah,
world,
and
right?
that's the thing. Like YouTube has only been around since 2005. So at most we would have had like. Do you want to cough and edit that out?
No, I don't. I don't want to edit out my coughs. I just coughed, and there's no editing of coughs.
So at most there would be 12 years of YouTube history, right? Did I just do that math right? 13 years. And then if you can imagine what is cool to do on YouTube, reviewing books is not the cool thing to do on YouTube. So it took a while for that to happen. And then it took a long time for it to grow. I started making videos 7 years ago. So when I started, there was a few people, but I can honestly admit that I think there was 7. Like I scoured YouTube once I discovered this, that people were reviewing books. I looked everywhere and there just wasn't that many people. Like 10 people were doing it. And so it was early days. People were doing simple things like just reviewing books. And And I was like, this is too much fun. This is too much fun. I was 16 years old. I loved reading with a passion, and with the type of passion that meant I needed to express it, with a passion that I needed to share. And I couldn't. I didn't know anyone in my real life that I could talk to about books. And so what I would do, and this is a true story, and I remember specifically doing this with Uglies by Scott Westerfeld, which is a great book. I would tell my mom the entire plot of a novel, like beginning to end, and then I could discuss it with her. So she didn't need to have read it, right? So that we could talk about it. I could just tell her the entire plot of a book, and then we could talk about it. Or as I was reading a book, I would keep my mom updated on what was happening, and then I would talk to her about it. So at some point...
And you were sort of 15 years old or something?
I was 16 when I started making videos. So I'd been doing that mom co-reading for like my whole childhood. And then one day I just typed into YouTube a book, and I don't for the life of me remember the book. Isn't that so disappointing? But I typed a book in, and a review of it came up, and I was like, oh my God, what? And I watched it, and I was like, what? And then all of these suggested videos of other people just sitting in their bedrooms at home by their bookshelves, reviewing a book they just read or talking about a book that they love. And I was like, oh my God, oh my God. And I ran and I set up my YouTube account with my dad, and I remember he helped me pick my username and everything. And then I just got a camera. I couldn't film.
What was your username?
It was Books Unbound. And I couldn't film when there was anyone home because that was way too awkward. So I would just wait until like everyone was out of the house, and then I would film like 4 videos. And then I would upload. I just started uploading them. And throughout the years, the community has grown to an honestly shocking point. The largest English-speaking booktuber, because there are really huge Spanish-speaking booktubers and other languages as well, but the largest English-speaking booktuber is Christine at Poland Bananas Books. She has
Sorry, can you say her name a little slower?
Yeah, it's Christine at Poland Bananas Books.
Poland Bananas Books, which we won't ask you what that means.
I mean, she started her channel making comedy sketches and other things, so it wasn't, I think that she just chose a name that she enjoyed, but it was the username time of the internet when usernames were fun if they were random. But she now has 380,000 subscribers, right? Wow. So the environment has grown. I remember when I found BookTube and I was starting to make videos, the biggest booktuber was The Readables, and I adored her channel. She's based in Winnipeg. She's incredible, but she stopped making videos now. But at the time, she reached 2,000 subscribers, and we were all like in awe. We were in awe that she could have 2,000 subscribers. This would have been like 2011 or 12. 2011 probably, that she could have 2,000 subscribers listening to her talk about books was incredible. Yeah,
because books are by kind of like small. They're smaller than the music industry, the movie industry, the film industry, everything is bigger than the book industry.
Definitely.
I think the largest publisher in the world, Penguin Random House, is not that much more than $10 billion in sales. And I worked at Walmart for 10 years, and our sales were close to $500 billion.
No, exactly.
Just as a point of scale. Yeah. And this is the largest publisher in the whole world.
Yeah.
So it's smaller. And now you're pointing out that people like yourself and Christine have hundreds of thousands of followers. Subscribers. Yep. Big difference.
There's a difference.
and then you're articulating this ecosystem for us. Now, can I say, but BookTube doesn't have there's no place of BookTube, right? It's just a series of people making videos about books within the YouTube ecosystem, right?
Yeah. So like I mentioned, when it first started, it was book reviews. That's what it was. That was the essence of it. And in many ways, it was just a video version of what was happening on book blogs, but in the way that book blogs have evolved on their own to create their own, like you said, ecosystem, so has BookTube. And so many interesting, exciting, fascinating things have happened. I remember when the first person ever when I watched the first person upload a book haul. So it's literally a video that's
Haul.
Yes, a haul. So very popular now, a video where you just sit down and you show on video all of the books that you recently bought. It could be on a trip, like, oh, I went to New York and I visited a bunch of book shops. Here are the books I got then, or here are the books I've got over the last month. So you haven't even read the books. You're just showing the books that you bought. And they're really fun, interesting videos, right? Because they don't require the time and energy that is required for reading let's say 9 books, but you can show what you're currently interested in and what books you've heard about and are intrigued by, and the kinds of things that are influencing what you want to read.
And you demonstrate one of the values of 3 books, which is humans are the best algorithm. So you show that like
So
what
true.
a person who walks into a bookstore ends up picking, which 5 books go together for what reason.
Yeah,
I'm going through a breakup, and therefore these 5 books from 5 different genres and categories and authors appeal to me for a variety of reasons.
Exactly. And they're often themed, right? They're often like summer book haul. These are the books I want to read this summer, or winter break book haul, or whatever, right? They have these themes, holiday book haul. So you do exactly like you said, you see what kinds of books people want to read, or it's very aspirational, right? Like the books they want to read for a certain time period or a certain stage in their life, etc. But there's book tags, which is when someone creates a set of questions. So I've made a few book tags in my day. And one of them, for example, was the book sacrifice tag. So it was just this idea that like, this was ages ago, but it was something like a zombie apocalypse is happening, and the only way to get rid of them is to get rid of, like, to throw overhyped books at them. What book do you think is overhyped?
Oh, that's funny.
So it was just setting up a bunch of different scenarios where you had to sacrifice books.
So you post this as a form of a question in a video and people respond in the comments? Or
No.
with their own
So
videos?
respond with their own videos.
Okay.
So I would make the original video where I share the like 6 questions, and then I would tag people. That's why it's called a book tag. I would tag other BookTube friends to do
in
it.
the comments?
No, I'll shout them out in the video.
Oh, okay.
And I'll be like, Jesse, do this video, or like, Christine, do this video. And then they'll go on and do it, and then they'll tag other people. So that's how it gets kind of propagated and shared throughout the community. And so, yeah, book tags are a really popular thing to do. Book hauls, book discussions, the conversation around spoilers versus non-spoilers. So some people like to do book reviews where they don't spoil anything so that everyone can watch them. But then if you are like deep into a fandom and you want to talk about a book with spoilers, you'll have that very prominently displayed.
So there's an ethic
There is definitely
a sense of integrity.
For sure.
A nomenclature. Because I also read online that there's also unhauls.
Yes, there is. Unhauls are fascinating.
They prune their bookshelf.
They get rid of the
book is
books.
dead to me.
Yeah, the
And here's
books they
why.
don't want to read anymore, and the books that they're sick of or that they bought a long time ago and they don't actually care about anymore, etc. So there's all these different types of videos, and book wrap-ups are very common, and book to be reads. So these are like, there's formula videos. A book to be read is always done at
TBRs.
TBR, yeah, is done at the beginning of a month. So someone says, these are the 5, 8, 3, depending on how ambitious you are, how much time you have, books I want to read this month. And then at the end, these are the books I read this month, right? So there is very much a formula to the kinds of videos that are made, a tradition, a culture. But there's also a lot of creativity happening on BookTube. A lot of really interesting ideas, fun ideas that are based around books. They're always based around books. That's why it's BookTube, right? But they just take the 2 elements, books and video, and then there's so much you can do with that. I've seen people recreate books, scenes from a book. I've seen people create makeup looks inspired by book covers.
Wow.
I've seen people write songs based on books. There's so many things that you can do through video. And the whole point, I think, of BookTube is just enthusiasm. It's sharing your love and passion for reading that you can't normally do in a bookshop or something, or like, unless you have a book
Not
club.
many people in the bookshop paint their face to look like Dumbledore.
No, exactly though. Like book club maybe, but how many book clubs? Like I don't actually know anyone who's in a physical book club. You know what I mean? So I think that the internet has brought all of these people who, like me, had no one to talk to books about with, has brought them together to this one space that is fun and entertaining and is so good at sharing personality on video. You see the person waving their arms enthusiastically and shouting or being excited or being calm, whatever their personality is, you can really easily get that. And it's all about books. It's incredible.
Well, we have a passionate community on 3 books, and the way I articulate is people who want to read more and want to read better and want to read different. And everyone says I don't have enough time to read.
Yeah.
And so we're appealing to people that want to find their next great book because there's so many books out there. So for those listening who are intrigued, like me, with what you're saying, but also have no, kind of hands in this dark forest called booktubing yet.
Yeah.
Like I don't. Like I'm the same way. I like books. I want to read more, but I don't. So Can you just guide us? How do we walk into this forest? What's the best place to start? Is there a specific website, a channel or two you'd recommend? How do we go in? What's the entry point?
Yeah, so I think that's the amazing part about trying to join this community. Is so easy. You just go to YouTube. So go to YouTube right now, everybody. Grab your laptops, grab your phones, go to YouTube and type in a book that you like or an author that you like and hit enter. I guarantee you'll find someone who has reviewed that book or talked about that author. And that's your entry point. I think I know the majority of BookTube is young adult focused, which makes a lot of sense for a lot of reasons. If you think about the biggest demographic of people that watch YouTube, the people that have access and are okay with making videos, and the people that are most commonly spending their time like online, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, you have young people online. So not exclusively, obviously, but the majority of BookTube is young adult. And again, I think also that young adult books, fandom, enthusiasm lends itself very well to BookTube. This idea that you're making a video just like shouting. I say shouting. Some people do shout, but not everyone. Just shouting your enthusiasm about a book you just read. That's a very like teenage thing, right? Or a young person thing. So there is a lot of people talking about young adult literature. However, there is a myth that BookTube is only young adult literature. And that is a massive mistake. And I think a massive oversight. There are so many incredible booktubers making videos about every single genre you can imagine. There is a thriller community, a horror community. One of my favorite channels is Chapter Stacks. Her name is Katie. She's
Chapter Stacks?
Yeah, she's incredible.
With an X or a CK?
With CKSS, two
okay.
S's. Chapter Stacks, Katie. She loves thriller and horror books. I don't read thriller and horror. Maybe I will one day, but I don't really read thriller and horror, but she has such a passion for it that I don't care. I just love watching her ideas and videos about Stephen King and other authors. She's fantastic. But there are channels like Reading Bukowski, Claire, she's great also. I really love her. She reviews classics. You know, she loves classics. And if you're looking for a review of a Victorian text, she's the lady to go to. And there is a community of people that love talking about classic literature. And like graphic novels. Graphic novels are great on BookTube just because you can actually flip through and show what the art style is like. So literally any type of genre that you can imagine is represented on BookTube. There are people talking about it. And more excitingly, I think, if you want to talk about them, you can, right? You don't need to read young adult to be a part of this community. There are so many different aspects to it. Yeah.
There's so many more questions I have.
I feel you.
But you've given us a great overview for the amateur.
Yeah, good.
And the novice and the 81% who were like, no, I don't know what
81%.
The 81%.
We are the 81%.
You're speaking to us. But that means 19% of people know what a booktuber is.
Mm-hmm. And how many people voted in the poll? Do you know?
Very small. It's like 100 people or something.
That's a decent pool. Yeah, okay. At least 19 people have heard of it. That's cool.
Well, you have hundreds of thousands of subscribers, so we know it's far, far greater than that. Now, do you mind if we dovetail into your 3 most formative books?
Of course.
We've got that great overview. And of course, I will tack on to the beginning of this conversation a whole beautiful biography of you and everything you're working on. So let's go into the books now. Are you okay if we start with this one?
Do you want to start with that one?
Well, which one do you want to start with?
I want to start with Animal Farm.
Oh, okay. She spills the beans right away. Okay, so the first book we gotta start with it now, is Animal. I was thinking starting with the young adult, but it's your life. So
no. I want to start with Animal Farm.
Okay,
it's the most important of all the books.
Oh, good. Okay, so Animal Farm by George Orwell. Subtitle, which was not used sometimes, called A Fairy Story. This was published in 1945 by Martin Secker Warburg. Then published by Penguin Books in 1951.
Can confirm.
You can confirm. At the back, it says, it is the history of a revolution that went wrong and of the excellent excuses that were forthcoming at every step for the perversion of the original doctrine. That's what George Orwell wrote in the original blurb for his first edition of Animal Farm in 1945. His simple and tragic fable telling what happens when the animals drive out Mr. Jones and attempt to run the farm themselves, has since become a world-famous classic of English prose. George Orwell, of course, I shouldn't say of course because I didn't know all this, was the author, maybe most famously known for Animal Farm and 1984. And sadly, I didn't realize till I checked this out that he died at age 47.
Yeah, it's a tragedy.
Very young. Tell us
What else could he have written? That's always the question.
I mean, yeah, age 47. Tell us about your relationship with Animal Farm.
I thought you were going to say with George. Okay. Here we go. So I think it's I haven't heard all of the episodes yet of the podcast, so I don't know if everyone also does this preface. You asked for my most formative books, right? And I think that's very interesting because it's not exactly the same as your favorite books. It's not exactly the same as the books you would read over and over and over again. So that was really important when I was trying to pick these 3 books.
Or the books that you would throw at a zombie.
Yeah, exactly. Something I didn't know we all needed to know. But this book, Animal Farm, is my favorite book of all time. So the overlap is 100% on that one. It is probably the most formative book for me and the most my most favorite book. So when I was in high school, I hated English. I haven't told many people this, but I really disliked English class. I thought it was boring. I thought it was hard. I thought it was not fun. And I like things that are fun. And it's funny because I always really loved reading, right? I started a BookTube channel devoted to just sharing my love of reading. I clearly love reading. Oh my God, one of my most prized possessions is my Plum Rewards card from Chapters, which is the bookstore chain here in Canada. I really love reading, but I didn't see that reflected in my English class, right? I saw English class as a slog until grade 11, which is pretty late in the game, right? I've done half of high school hating English, and here I am in grade 11, and I have this incredible teacher whose name is Mrs. Waters. You know, I should really reach out to her because she was a game changer for me. Mrs. Waters had enthusiasm, is what she had. I think that was her special talent. She had enthusiasm, and I've mentioned this before on my channel, but she had the type of enthusiasm that I now see in BookTube. Mm-hmm. It's that pure, unbridled joy for reading, but also, importantly, a seriousness for reading, taking it as something that can be formative, something that can be revolutionary, etc. So in that class, we read some really great texts. We read Macbeth, which is now my favorite Shakespeare, but we also read Animal Farm. And so this is part of the reason why I love Animal Farm so much, is that it was probably the first book that made me realize that what was happening in writing. Remember, I was probably 15 or 16 when this class was happening. It was the first book that made me realize that writing can change the world, that writing can be powerful, that it can be really nuanced, and that it can be political also. So you should have seen me in this class. I was one of the few people that was like on top of the reading. I was like ready for every single class because I thought that this book was so incredible. And there's so many layers and like symbolism and metaphor, etc. All these words that we're sick of. Allusions and satire. All these words that are boring, but are also really not boring when done well. This started a legitimate love affair with George Orwell, who I'm just obsessed with George Orwell. I've read so many of his essays because in his time, I'm not sure if you know this or not, but in his time, he was more known as a journalist and as an essay writer before he was a novelist. Both of his biggest books, Animal Farm in 1984, came out in the final years of his life. So they were large when they came out, but they were never as big as they are now, right? Until after his death. So it's really interesting because he would have thought of himself as an essayist and as a journalist, and he worked for the BBC. So he was more of a nonfiction writer. And so reading his nonfiction is fascinating. It's really cool. But I just love Animal Farm. Like, I haven't read anything by him that has topped Animal Farm. I think definitely 1984 has had a way bigger impact on the world. Like, if we think about how often people talk about Big Brother and ideas like that.
But apparently, I didn't realize this till I was researching for the show. The phrase Orwellian came from both these two books.
Yeah. This idea of kind of a surveillance state, kind of a dark, that's the word that comes to mind, dark, kind of a government. But yeah, so Animal Farm, I'm sure loads of people have read, also because it is often assigned in school because it is an Orwell, but it's very short.
So if you haven't read it, like I hadn't, who should read it? Who's this book good for?
Everyone needs to read Animal Farm. I am convinced of this point.
It's short.
It's first of all, it's short. So you're pages. It's 90. I think my copy is 95 pages.
Oh, mine is 95 pages as well upon further inspection.
I think, first of all, it is short, and I love short books. I think that there's something beautiful in a short book. The ability to say something powerful in a short amount of time, to realize what it is you want to say and to just say it, to not drag it out. Obviously, there are good long books also. I just prefer short books. But this is a short, powerful book. It's not going to take you a long time to read, one, because it is short, but also because it's compelling. But when you read it, I think you're going to have fun with it. I think it is fun. I think it's so dark and serious and it's depressing. No spoilers. Are we allowed to spoil on this podcast? I won't spoil anything.
You may, I mean, listen,
I mean, it's been out for a long time, so there's no excuse. But I won't spoil anything. But it does have a depressing ending, like a classic Orwell ending where you're not happy and you're super depressed and upset because things didn't turn out the way they were supposed to.
And it includes this phrase: "All animals are equal, but some animals are more equal than others."
I think that this book is so relevant. What a political time, right? Like that's such an easy thing to say, but I've never in my life, and I mean my age might have something to do with it, but I've never in my life seen so much political talk and worry and angst and anxiousness, et cetera, et cetera. And if fiction can change your opinion or enlighten you in some way, then that's, to me, ideal. Because it's fun and it can be a little bit like abstract. It can do something weird, like have talking pigs. But it can also show you some stuff that is shocking. For me, my most favorite character in this is Benjamin. Benjamin is a donkey, and he is the only person on the farm that can read. If you haven't read Animal Farm, just really quickly, it's about a revolution. It's about these animals that live on a farm, and they're owned by a farmer named Mr. Jones, and he's a jerk, and he's awful, and he forgets to feed them sometimes, and he's abusive to them. Yeah, he abuses them, and he's really a horrible leader. So they decide one day, that's it. We've had enough of this. We're going to take over the farm. So they attack him, and they get him and his wife to leave the farm, and they set up their own government. It is an allegory, a mirroring, a reflection of the Russian Revolution very heavily, but you don't need to know that to read it. But basically, they try and instill their own government, which is very much a communist kind of an idea, like everyone's going to be equal, everyone's going to do the same amount of work, etc. But what happens is that it just becomes completely corrupt because of the inequities and unequal nature of each of the animals, right? They all have different strengths and abilities, and some are smarter than others. Most prominently, the pigs are really smart. They're really clever. And the other animals, like the chickens or the horses, are very good at manual labor, etc., but they're not that smart. So they are able to be manipulated by the pigs. So anyway, my favorite character is Benjamin, who is this donkey on the farm. He is not on the side of the evil pigs, but in my opinion, he's almost worse. He's almost worse than those freaking pigs because he is of the, like, if we were to put it, which is stupid because there's more nuance, but if we were to put it like good side, all of the animals, bad side, the pigs, right? He's definitely on the good team. He doesn't like what the pigs are doing. He is a lot smarter than all of the horses and the ducks and everyone, but he can read. And that's so impactful here in this text, where not many of the animals can read and are having a lot of difficulty learning to read. There's this huge emphasis on the power of literature, the power of words and communication and writing, and how they can impact how much power you have in the text. If you can read, you're a far more powerful character in Animal Farm. And Benjamin can read. He can read really well, and he doesn't use it. He doesn't use it. He doesn't help any of his fellow animals. And there's this horrible moment, which it's not a huge, I mean, it's kind of a spoiler, but we'll get over it. There's this tragic moment where one of the animals is being taken away to slaughter, and he's been told that he's being taken away to a doctor. And no one knows that because the pigs have told them he's being taken to a doctor, and they all just buy it. But Benjamin can read the truck. He can read the side of the truck that's taking this animal away, and he can read that it says slaughter, and he does nothing. He does nothing. And when he finally does speak up, it's far too late. That is probably the biggest lesson I've oddly taken away from this book, is that if you do have some sort of power, if you have some sort of ability to help, it's your responsibility to, oh my God, it's Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. You need to be able to help other people if you have that ability. And Benjamin doesn't. And it's, to me, the most disappointing, sad moment of the entire text.
So why is he your favorite character? Because of the lesson?
Yeah, because it's a lesson.
Not because you love Benjamin.
No, I don't I actually really dislike Benjamin. But I guess I can sympathize with Benjamin. He sees it as a lost cause. It would be really hard to talk with those chickens. They're really stupid.
That's a fantastic overview of the book and also what it means to you and what you can take from it. I loved reading this book.
I'm so
glad. I read it
glad.
on a flight, and the fact that it was small and fit in my hand and I could see the ending from the beginning made it so much more exciting to read this and knowing how powerful it was. So
It's
thank
accessible.
you
I'm glad
for,
that you
for
liked
putting
it.
this on our top 1,000 formative books of all time. Now, which of these two, I'm going to hold them in my hands. You tap which one you want to talk about next. Okay. So now we're going to transition from Animal Farm by George Orwell up to Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesiac by Gabrielle Zevin. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think it's Gabrielle, but
Gabrielle.
I just realized I've just been saying that. I've never actually heard it.
Let's call her Gabby. Gabrielle Zevin. This book was published in 2007 by R.R. Donnelly and Sons and a division of Macmillan. And I'm going to read the back so people can get a little context. It's a young adult book, okay? It says, sometimes a girl needs to lose. If Naomi had picked tails, she would have won the coin toss. She wouldn't have had to go back for the yearbook camera, and she wouldn't have hit her head on the steps. She wouldn't have woken up in an ambulance with amnesia. She certainly would have remembered her boyfriend, Ace. She might have even remembered why she fell in love with him in the first place. She would understand why her best friend Will keeps calling her Chief. She'd get all his inside jokes. And maybe he wouldn't be so frustrated with her for forgetting things she can't possibly remember. She'd know about her mom's new family. She'd know about her dad's fiance. She wouldn't have to spend her junior year relearning all the French she supposedly already knew. She never would have met James, the boy with the questionable past and the even fuzzier future, who tells her he once wanted to kiss her. She wouldn't have wanted to kiss him back. But Naomi picked heads. This,
Dun, dun, dun.
dun, dun, dun.
I'm proud of whoever wrote that synopsis.
It's a great one.
It's a good synopsis.
It takes you into it instead of over it, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesiac by Gabrielle Zevin. Tell us about your relationship with this book.
I love this book. So it's been a long time since I've read this book, and I'm really glad that you read the synopsis out because I just got really warm, fuzzy feelings. I love this book so much. So this, I really, really, really wanted to pick a young adult book, and because it's been a truly formative time of my reading, and I use that word on purpose because that's the main word for us here, right? Formative. I think that young adult is such a fantastic genre for getting people into reading. I think it's so much fun, and it can be so interesting. It can be really beautiful and important and interesting and educational and reflective. And I had a really hard time trying to just pick one book, one young adult book to represent this formative time. But I picked this one because it's probably the one I've reread the most, especially when I was a teenager. There's a really distinct difference between my reading before BookTube and after BookTube. So before BookTube, I would go to Chapters. And I say Chapters just because that was always the one nearest my house that I loved. No offense to indie bookshops. I love you too. But I would go to Chapters and I would spend hours in Chapters at the young adult section getting a bunch of books, sitting down and reading like the first chapter or the first few pages and being like, no, I don't like this. Or, oh, yeah, this one's cool. And creating a more selective pile. And then at the end, I would pick like 3 books and I would go home and I would read all those 3 books and then I'd read them again and then I would read them again. I just really loved rereading when I was a teenager.
Why?
I honestly, I can't pin it down. I loved getting to know characters. I loved feeling, because for me, the first time I read a book or even watch a film is kind of stressful. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know if I'm going to be happy with the way that it ends. But the second time that I watch something is so much more relaxed. I'm like, I know how this is going to end. I like the way it ends. I agree with the way it ends, or I disagree, but I know. So I'm like a lot more comfortable reading it. But also I can just get so many more details from it that I couldn't the first time that I read it, and just excitement.
Do you do that today?
No, so this is the interesting thing. So that was the way I read before BookTube. But after BookTube, I learned about so many books that before didn't matter to me, because literally my experience was so solitary. It would just be me going to a bookshop, picking 3 books, going home and being satisfied with those 3 books. I didn't know about any other books, right? And I knew that the bookshop had the next time I was going to go. But now because of BookTube, I am constantly made aware of so many new books that rereading has really fallen behind, because I'm like, well, why would I reread a book when I could finally get to this other book and this other book that I wanted to read? But it's actually been an active thing that I've been trying to recorrect, because I love rereading.
You want to bring rereading back?
Yes, and I started this book this year by rereading 3 books, and it was the best start to a year ever. It was this resinking into 3 different worlds that I love, right? And that I knew weren't going to disappoint me.
Resinking, rereading.
Yeah.
I love all the re's.
Yes.
And it's about reading.
Redoing. Yeah, it's about reading. You're right.
And are you finding now that you've brought rereading back in?
Reintegrated.
Yeah. Oh, God. Have you recharged yourself?
Yeah. No,
I'm trying to use
it's
a
way
re.
better. It's because for me, why do we read? Oh my God, a huge question. So many reasons. Everyone's got different reasons, and they're all valid. One of the reasons I read is to find favorite books so that I can reread them, so that I have these places, because books are places. When you are reading a book and it's a good book that you like, you are in a new place.
Totally.
You are, right? You are in a space.
And all the neuroscience agrees with that. You have this area in your visual cortex, area 17, it lights up. You reread the book, that same area of your brain lights up again. And there's a lot of research on specifically fiction and specifically literary fiction, opening these dimensions of our brains and creating things and building things like empathy, compassion, relatability, all that stuff through the book.
Yeah, I didn't know that. I'm going to look up Area 17. It sounds very legit.
It sounds like a place UFOs land.
District 17, like in the Hunger Games. But yeah, no, you're in this place. And so one of the reasons that I read is to find those places. It's like, why do we travel, right? Like, and once you find, like a lot of people, I don't know, they go to Rome and then they go to Rome again and then they go to Rome again. And you're like, why don't you go to a new place? And like, no, I love Rome or wherever, right? You're going to find these places that you love. And I feel a similar way about reading. I like finding places that I love and then revisiting them. So yeah, I love rereading. But anyway, this was a book I reread a lot.
Don't say anyway, because just sort of hold us there for a second. I like that place you're taking us to, which is that you're panning for gold, pulling out these nuggets. And I don't know if you put them in a special part of your shelf, but
I do.
This you do?
Yeah.
So this is like the reread shelf?
This is in my favorites shelf.
Favorites, okay. So Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesiac is one of those books that you will reread.
Yes.
And just as a little tiny aside, what's another book that you reread often? Or
Animal Farm.
Animal Farm. Okay.
Fly on the Wall by E. Lockhart, which is a great book about a girl who gets turned into a fly. It's a young adult retelling of Kafka's Metamorphosis.
Oh, interesting.
Is a book that I reread at the beginning of this year that was phenomenal.
It also probably helps that there's so many quotes in this book, Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesiac, about reading. So when she first meets her boyfriend, Ace, who she doesn't remember, he says on page 96, you were the first brainy girl who'd ever shown any interest in me. Brainy girl? Yeah, one who reads and stuff, not just for school. I like that about you. And then later on, she goes to his house for the first time, although she's been there before. She doesn't remember it. And he's this jock character. The wallpaper was plaid, and vintage wooden tennis rackets hung from the wall. I looked at his bookshelves, and other than the school books, all he had were athletes' memoirs and a set of leather-bound classics. It's almost like judgy, you know, and a little shame, you know. Oh, he only reads like an author's memoirs. Yuck.
Not even author memoirs, sports memoirs.
Yuck. But there's all these little references. So to you as this growing person looking for rereadable books, that must have also served you pretty well.
Yeah. I think I was, I'm guessing I was 14 when I first read this book, maybe 15.
And do you reread the books in a certain time, place, or emotional state? Like, because Gretchen Rubin, author of The Happiness Project, a past guest on 3 books, says she revisits all her young adult and children's books when she's in times of stress. So she goes to Laura Ingalls Wilder and, like, you know, creates a space for her to reread that stuff.
Yeah, I definitely feel that way. I definitely feel that my phone alarm is going
That's okay. Time to wake up.
I think it is time to wake up. Yeah, it's my 10 a.m.
Is it actually your wake up? Sign that you're a master's student. You have a 10 a.m. alarm clock going.
I have it. It's on every single day in case I have not woken up yet.
And how many days will you actually rely on that?
Not many.
Okay.
No, but it's an important backup system.
Okay, so as someone who has children, that is so laughable to me. Because I was a university student too, and I remember those days and the afternoon naps and the staying up till 4 and what pizza places open at 3 a.m. Yeah. I remember those days. Now I'm in the opposite world of you, which I do not set an alarm clock anymore because I have 2 roosters in my house.
They've figured it out for you.
And I have 2 kids as well.
Yeah, no, of course. Like Gretchen, you said it was Gretchen. Yeah, like Gretchen mentioned. I also do find myself rereading books most when I'm stressed or I don't know, just not happy, not at my happiest. And the beginning of this year, for example, like I mentioned, I reread 3 books, and that was in part because 1, I was really excited about the year, and I wanted to like set it off in a place that I knew was going to be happy. Like I can confirm that those books bring me joy, so reading them would work, right? I wasn't like trying something that might disappoint me. But also, I was super stressed because I'm currently in my master's program, and it is probably the most challenging thing I've ever done. So I was super stressed out and super bogged down with work and trying to balance masters and everything I do online. So I ended up turning to rereading, and it was a great decision. But this book...
Love the reading as medicine metaphor, which I don't think of books enough that way. But meanwhile, I'll go to therapy to talk things out.
Yeah.
But meanwhile, there's a voice on a book.
You should
in
just
a book
be
in my shelf.
Rereading your favorite books.
That should be. I need to start coming up with a little pill cabinet for my.
You should reread do a book club with your therapist where you reread your favorite books.
Very expensive book club.
Yeah, that's very true.
But I interrupted you. You were going to say this book, and then I think you're going to lead into who should read it and kind of why.
Well, the reason that I loved this book and continue to love this book,
Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesia.
Yes,
just going to throw the name in. Yeah,
is that. It is about a person reinventing themselves. And I think that's when you're a teenager is the thing you want to do the most and you want to do the most often. Constantly reinvent. I mean, obviously you can do that at any point in your life, but this is why I think it meant so much to me when I was a teenager. It's about this girl who is, she's a journalist of are you a journalist at school?
Well, she's editor of the school yearbook.
Yeah.
So that counts.
So she is in high school and she falls down a flight of concrete stairs and hits her head. And when she wakes up, she doesn't remember the last 6 or 7 years or something. She doesn't remember her parents' divorce. She doesn't remember who she's dating. The scene I think about the most when I think about this book is the scene where she goes back to her bedroom. She's trying to remember the things in her room. She recognizes some of them, but some of them she doesn't. But she finds this food diary. And this food diary is her tracking calories. And she's like, I don't like that I was the type of person that tracked calories at age 15 or whatever. Especially because weight is not part of her life problems, right? She's fine. She's a normal weight. She's an athletic, healthy person. So she's just doing it because of probably peer pressure. So that moment was fascinating to me. Imagine if you forgot who you were and you only had the items around you to kind of redetermine what that was. And I imagine going through my own bedroom and seeing like all of the Harry Potter, when I was young, all of the Harry Potter posters, and like seeing what types of books I had on my bookshelves, etc. Like what would I like myself, and like how would you figure yourself out? And eventually she like, I also like about this book that she has 3 different boyfriends in the book, which is very rare in a young adult book. Usually, and I think in most books it's rare. Usually it's just like one love interest, right? And that's the person that you want the person to get with at the end of the book. It's what you're all building towards. But in this book, she goes through these 3 different phases, and they're 3 very different partners. And
the athletic jock, the other editor of the yearbook, the sort of scrappy guy who lives on the train.
Yeah,
you know
exactly. I mean? They're all very
Sampling
different.
herself.
Exactly. She's learning so much through all of these different relationships. So who do I think should read this book? Probably younger people, probably people who are interested in who they are and who they want to be. I love this book. I think it's great.
I totally agree with you, because I loved it as well. And I think it's kind of like a hokey premise, it sounds like, but you fall down your stairs, you lose your but it's got a much deeper theme, which is you get to decide who you will be, and it's worth pausing and reflecting and reassessing, re that over and over again, and making conscious step changes.
And an important part of that relationship is like with her parents too. Like, what is her relationship with her parents now that they're divorced, etc. It's a great book. Oh, and I also think it's a really good example of well-written young adult, right? I think there's a common misconception that young adult is kind of trashy or really easy to read, or it's really super just about the plot and it's not about these bigger themes. And I think that this book does a good job of being more than that. I love it.
Great, thank you. I read both of your first 2 books. I struggled with this third and final book.
Oh no!
Okay.
I get why.
It's called All We Shall Know, a novel by Donal Ryan.
Donal.
Thank you for correcting me. Donal. Her last name is Ryan, Ryan.
He's Irish.
So
that's why it's
He's
Donal.
the author of The Spinning Heart and winner of the Guardian First Book Award. Also has been nominated for the Man Booker Prize. This summary of this book, first I'm going to share the publishing date and publisher, which I like to do. I think I want to start adding Dewey Decimal numbers to my little overviews. I really do. It's a shout out to librarians. So anyway, it's 2016. This book came out, published in Great Britain by Doubleday, an imprint of Penguin Random House. And Dewey Decimal number is 823.92, somewhere in literary fiction. I'm going to start doing those Dewey. What do you guys think? Should I do Dewey Decimal shout outs? That's a good question.
So I didn't know that they put Dewey Decimal numbers in here.
Do you see that DDC?
No, where is that?
It's like hidden on the Library of Congress copyright page.
Oh.
And whenever you see DDC, I guess that stands for Dewey Decimal, maybe categorization. And
I didn't know that was in books.
Yeah, and
that is so cool.
It's in. Oh, I love that I'm teaching you something about books.
Okay, so I thought, and this shows my ignorance.
No,
I
you're
thought
not
that
ignorant.
every library had its own numbers.
Oh, you thought they just made their own up? Yeah. We'll just put the science over in the 900s here. That kind of thing?
Yeah, sort of. Like I figured that there was like a kind of an overarching system, but depending on the amount of books that you had, you went 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Oh, interesting. No, and actually, based on what I'm learning about the Dewey Decimal System, it's like it's an older system of categorization, still used by most modern libraries. They have I have on my phone. I'm actually going to show you right now. Hold on. Here's my phone. I've got this app I got to tell you about.
Okay.
Okay, so I got my phone, and I downloaded this app. So I organize all my books in the Dewey Decimal System at my house.
Incredible.
Which is either
I've never
great
heard
or
of
totally
that.
weird and obsessive. But I got this app. It's called Decimator.
Okay.
DECIMATOR. It has the Dewey Decimal System. So, this book, I just read out the number. If you remember, it was 8. So it's 800s are literature.
Yeah.
Then 8 twos are English.
Oh my God,
and
this
then
is so cool.
8 to 9, I guess, or whatever I said it was, 8 to 8 is English humor and satire, or English letters. And you see, then suddenly, when I'm filing,
That's
This Is Water by
incredible.
David Foster Wallace, and I look up the number, it's like, no wonder it's beside another commencement speech that I already have on my shelf.
Right.
And then you learn things about yourself.
Wow.
I'm like, oh my gosh, I have hardly any books in the entire religion. Like the 200s are all religion. I'm like, oh my gosh, how shameful. I have very few books in religion. And then I look at the next one, which is like science, the 500s, and I'm like, Even less in science. Like I'm just totally ignorant about how anything possibly works in the world from any perspective. And then I'm like, hilariously, you know, I look at like, you know, 1, 5. You start developing your favorite numbers. Like,
my God.
Yeah.
This is so cool.
So like 1 point.
I can see myself falling down this rabbit hole.
Oh, good. Come down the hole with me. It's really warm and comfy out here. 158.1 is personal improvement and analysis. Sounds like really maybe like navel gazing,
right?
Yeah. So I have like it's like the shelf is full. Like I have like dozens and dozens.
That's incredible.
And even the happiness equation, my own book, is sitting in that part.
That's super
So it's like
cool.
It makes sense that I like
that does
read
make
and
perfect
distilled
sense.
and like reflected back into that area. And then you find out your favorite. So like when I was a kid, I remember distinctly as an 8-year-old, I would always walk to the library and I would go to 741.59 because 741.59 is the comic books, graphic novels, you know, and stuff. And then sure enough, as I look at my adult bookshelf, I've got the old ones from my life, Far Side, Calvin and Hobbes, and I've got the new ones like the Adrian Tamine graphic novels, the like Chris Ware books and stuff. So it's like it's a cool merger of my life in the 741.5 category.
So do you put the stickers on the bottom of the book?
I do not do that because I'm not super
because I'm not a crazy person.
No, I don't. When you go online and you research people that have done this, which I did to do it, most people do the stickers, but I actually write the numbers on the inside cover.
Okay, that's cool.
So that I have a quick way to look at it without making all my books look
like library.
Well, I just don't have the sticker and label maker, and I feel like that's going to that's a next level. That's the next level.
That's
now,
very cool.
Where were we? This book is called All We Shall Know by Donal Ryan.
Donal. I was
you.
corrected in the comments of one of my videos, so that's the only reason I know.
I'm thankful.
I can be your comment section.
Okay, here's the summary. Melody She is alone and in trouble. At 33 years old, she finds herself pregnant with the child of a 17-year-old traveler boy.
Scandalous.
Martin Toppy, and not by her husband, Pat.
Even more scandalous.
Melody was teaching Martin to read, but now he's gone, and Pat leaves too, full of rage. She's trying to stay in the moment, but the future is looming while the past won't let her go. This book follows the 9 months of her pregnancy and unfolds with emotional immediacy in Melody's fierce, funny, unforgettable voice as she contends with choices past and present. I would agree with everything I just read except for the word funny. I found this book
it's not funny.
Heart-wrenching and difficult.
I also would not call this book funny.
But it was... The reason I couldn't read it is because it was so emotionally gripping. So tell us about your relationship with All We Shall Know.
So the reason that I picked up this book is one of my favorite reasons, and it was just good book selling. Some genius at the Waterstone, which it's the Hatchards on near Piccadilly in London, they had this book just prominently displayed on a little table, and the cover just called me in. And so I was like, well, this is a gorgeous cover. It's very different from the North American cover.
Which I have.
Yeah.
My cover is like half of a face looking like it might cry, which
Classic.
is striking as well.
A
Yours
classic
looks
cover.
like blue teardrops or thumbprints stamped all over the cover.
Yeah, I kind of feel like it's raining on this cover, which is fitting. And also the it has sprayed blue edges, which is beautiful on the pages.
The paper looks blue from all sides.
Yeah. So I picked it up just because it was pretty, and I read the synopsis, and I was just scandalized because I just thought it was so exciting that she's pregnant by someone who isn't her husband. I was like, oh, well, Christ, you can't fix that. Like, this is an unfixable problem unless you're going to have an abortion. But she didn't want to, right? That was not in the synopsis. It says that she's going to have this baby. So I was like, okay, well, how the hell are they going to fix this? So I sat down in that bookshop, which if you haven't been to that bookshop and you're in the London
bookshop?
area.
You mentioned it quickly.
It's Hatchards. It's
Hatchards?
in the Piccadilly area. It's gorgeous.
In London.
Everyone should go. Yeah, definitely. Everyone should go there. So I just sat down, and they have all of these like old chairs in Hatchards. So I love it when bookshops have chairs. So I sat down and I just started reading, and I was just sucked in. And that I love when that happens. Most of the books that I buy now and read now are recommended to me. Not even specifically recommended to me like by a friend, but I mean more like I'm watching YouTube videos about books and people are reviewing books. And so I've heard someone else's take on a book and I think, oh, that sounds good. I would like to check that out. Or I also follow a lot of book people on Instagram and I see a book being mentioned a lot. So I look it up on Goodreads. Everything I buy now, I check on Goodreads.
What are you checking for when you check Goodreads?
I'm checking one, if some of my friends friends have read it because I have so many friends on that platform that I have friends that read similar things to me. So I'll be like,
You're
oh,
like
dude.
the number. I saw you're like the number one of the top most followed people in all of Goodreads. You're
Yeah.
number what?
I think 2.
You're number 2.
But I think that's
Do
in
not be
Canada.
humble.
I think that's in Canada though.
Don't hedge it. We're a very literary country here. But you're saying I went to your Goodreads page. So I was like, whoa, you are smoking on Goodreads.
I love Goodreads. I've been using it for a long time.
So the first thing you check is who else has read it that I know. Then what do you check? Because I'm a
Then I
novice on
check-
Goodreads. So when
then
I
I
go,
check
I
the
find it
rating.
unwieldy. I don't know what I'm looking for.
I do. I check the rating.
Out of 5.
It's out of 5.
What does the
and
rating
it's-
tell you? If the number, like, tell me by number
it's
what it tells
the
you.
average number. So everyone rates it 1 to 5, and then it will tell you the average. So it's like 3 point something or 2 point something. If
What's
it's
good to
under
you?
3, I don't read it.
Oh, interesting.
Because
That's your Rotten Tomatoes like barometer.
yeah,
Fresh,
and
rotten.
And I find that really interesting. Kind of like objectively, I find that awful. I don't think that is a good life policy because there's probably books I love that have under a 3 rating. I bet, like books are so personal. Just because you don't like or someone else doesn't like a book doesn't mean that you will. Like that's dumb. So really, I think that's really dumb. But there are just so many books that I want to read that I would like to as much as I can, heighten the chance that I'm going to like it. So if it has above a 3, I know that most people at least kind of liked it. So yeah.
And I
so
have very good news for you. All We Shall Know, the
Yep.
book we're talking about, has an average rating of 3.87.
fantastic. You see, that's a very good rating.
And the number 1 review on the entire book with 133 thumbs up is written by a woman named Ariel.
I've heard of her. I hear she's awesome.
You have the top review on this book and all of Goodreads. You are hilarious.
I have, you know what's
You
the
are killing
coolest?
it.
I think the coolest one I have is top review on Turtles All the Way Down by John Green.
Whoa.
It has like that review keeps getting likes and it's got like over 1,000 likes, which on Goodreads is a lot. But anyway, that's how I usually pick up the books that I want. It's become a very social and data informed selection process.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Whereas with this book, it was like the olden days. Like I told you, like when I was in high school and I would just go to chapters and find random books that I liked the cover and the synopsis sounded cool. So I'd sit down and read the first few pages.
Sorry,
so
Ariel, not to slow you down here,
Yeah.
but once you do the friends check and the rating check, and then you're all in? You don't read reviews. You aren't looking for...
So it depends. So
I just want to check your process here because I'm curious about
Yeah.
it.
So first I check if my friends have read it. And like Raylene is a friend of mine who used to make BookTube videos as well at Padfoot and Prong 07. She has very similar taste to me. And she reads a lot. So very often I go and she's reviewed it. And I'm like, yes, Raylene, what did you think? So I do that sort of thing where I just check if my friends have read it.
Then the rating.
Then I check the rating. And then
what?
if those two things have not satisfied me, I will then read reviews. But I skim them. I don't read, because I don't want to be spoiled for the book. And I also don't want to take other people's opinions as my own opinion. So I very quickly skim them. I will, like, a person will put, this book was great. And I'm like, okay, that's enough. And then I skim to the next one. So I don't actually read
And you
in-depth
trust
reviews.
the reviews, even though you don't know the people at all.
Yeah, I do.
Because
Because that's what I do.
And you read them in the order.
Just
that
the order that they're placed.
It's so
on there.
funny because, like, for the Book of Awesome, which is my biggest book, the top review, which you would read if you're trying to decide whether or not to read the Book of Awesome,
Did they not like it?
was 1 star.
Oh no.
The top review. Oh no, it's changed. It's somebody,
good.
a new one's gotten bumped.
I don't read
Well, the top
one-star
review
reviews.
for forever was always like this terrible, nasty. So I would be horrified that the thing but you have to check something, and so we end up trusting these algorithms that
Yeah.
decide which reviews to put up at the
I
top.
actually don't read 1-star reviews because 1-star reviews to me are mean. I don't know. Unless
You start at 2-star.
Yeah, well, yeah, like unless a book has an overall rating of like 1 or 2, then I'm thinking that there's something fundamentally wrong with the book. Like maybe there's some sort of racist element, or there's something that's really made people upset.
Yeah,
you know?
I don't
It's
read
not-
any books where the first 10 reviews say this is racist.
No, exactly. As we all should avoid. No, but you know what I mean? Like, I have often found that the books that have the lowest ratings, it's not even just the literary merit of the book. It's not if this is good or bad writing. It's that the author has done something stupidly dangerous in the book. Like, they're propagating an idea that's really bad, like something racist or sexist or etc. So usually unless that's the case, I don't read 1-star reviews because I find them mean, and it's just like someone who just for whatever reason, hated the book. And that's not the majority of the opinion.
I like that. I love that.
So don't worry. I'm not reading your one star
I've kind of held you with the lasso in this like deep
in the
analysis
Goodreads world
of Goodreads and how specifically you're choosing books. As you said, with All We Shall Know, it was the old days.
Yeah,
it was jumped to you and from a bookstore.
It was the amazing days where I just sat down and started reading it, and I was loving it. And I was like, oh my God, this is great. This is beautiful. First of all, I was stricken by how beautiful the writing is. Like, I think that Donal Ryan is an incredible writer. And I've also read his newest book, and it's also so beautifully written. And this is one of the reasons that I picked this book for you, Neil, because my ultimate goal in life, the dream here, everyone, is to be an author. And I'm at a point now where when I read, and I think I always did this, but it's become a heightened thing, is when I read, I'm trying to find models of writing. And not models that I would copy, but just things, what is it that I like in writing? What is it that I find powerful in writing? Whatever the hell Donal Ryan is doing is what I want to do. Mm-hmm. I love how he writes. It is lyrical. It is poetic. It's beautiful. For me, it is the definition of beautiful writing. And there are these passages that you read them and you're like, wow, that was good, like undoubtedly good and pretty and powerful. So that was really important to me with this book. But also, I love that it had a compelling plot. I'm still, I would say, new to literary fiction, even though I've been reading it for a few years. I don't feel like I'm super comfortable in the genre yet. Like, for example,
what is literary fiction?
I know, right? With young adult fiction, it's very much separated from literary fiction. Why is that? Because there's a bias against young people. I'll say it. I'll go ahead and say it. But I feel very comfortable in young adult fiction because I've read so much of it. You know, I'm so entrenched in that world.
And the word adult means 18 or over. So
right.
Technically when I'm hearing young adult, I'm thinking like 18 to 21.
Yeah.
As opposed to what I think the perception is more like 12 to 15? Or,
yeah, I mean,
know.
young adult is supposed to be like 14 to 19, I think, kind of those prime teenage years, but it's read so widely by everyone, so it's kind of losing, I think, why it was named young adult. But I guess when I think of literary fiction, I think of people who are trying to get awards and are trying to be taken seriously as important writers who will last. I mean, and there's a difference somehow. These are all questions I really need to ask myself more, and I'm constantly thinking about, to be honest, the difference between literary fiction and genre fiction. And it bothers me. It does. It bothers me, this idea that literary fiction is supposed to be serious and poetic, and it's not plot-based, because when something becomes plot-based, then that's not as good. It's not as deep. And I'm really curious about those assumptions. I'm curious about why we think that. And that's one of the reasons I love this book, because I think it balances those two things really well. I find the plot fascinating. I found it exciting and scandalous and interesting. And you get to know the characters, and there are exciting moments. Like you read the synopsis, but essentially it's about a woman who gets pregnant from a man who isn't her husband.
She's teaching him.
It's a student. And it's in a small Irish town. That's really, really important to this book, that it is set in a small Irish town. Not Dublin, a small Irish town. It's very conservative. And the moment that this happens to her, she becomes completely ostracized. She is pariah. She is not welcome in the community anymore. And so it's about what happens to a woman. That's another set of obstacle that she has to overcome. But like, what happens to a woman when she's pregnant and completely alone? What do you do? And it's about her trying to deal with that. And there's these incredible moments where she like snaps. She just breaks because she can't deal with that pressure anymore. And there are these juicy plot moments, right? Where you're like, whoa, this is exciting. I'm enjoying reading this, not just because it's pretty, not just because it's powerful or interesting or smart, but because it's a fun plot. It's an interesting story. And so I love that Donal can balance those two things. He can balance, I just used his first name as if he was my pal, but he is my pal. I love that he can balance plot and literary writing, which is what I want to do. That's my ultimate dream. If I could be any sort of writer, it would be like Donal. And Donal actually is a creative writing professor at Limerick University.
Yeah,
I
it
think.
says that. That's right.
So I need to just go take his course.
Yeah.
He needs to just show me how to do it.
Yeah. Well, that is a great overview of this book. I found that this book was too emotionally heavy for me to get through because as a dad with young children,
Yeah.
it's just hard to
Oh my God, it's brutal.
manage the emotions of this book. But I agree with everything you said, of course. About
Do you think you'll finish it?
I don't know. You can see where my bookmark is.
Yeah, you made it like
It's like a
halfway.
hotel room key bookmark, the classic hotel room key bookmark, which was clearly not returned to the hotel.
I don't think they care about that
But
anymore.
I noticed all your books are about loss. Like,
Are they?
Like there's a loss of memory in the Amnesiac.
that's true.
There's the loss of marriage in this book. There's
and community.
loss of community. There's loss of trust in many of the books. Animal Farm, loss of kind of a societal balance. There's lots of trust with the other animals. Did I pull that out of nowhere, or do you have a thing for
You've just
loss?
made me realize something that I had not realized, and now I am starting to question all of my life decisions. I had not noticed that. I think that's a super fascinating. I need to grapple with that. I don't know what to do with that. I've not like lost anyone in my life. I've not dealt with like grief or loss in that form. So I don't think it comes from that. I'm trying to think. I move around a lot. I've never stayed in one place for very long, and that's for loads of different life reasons. So I wonder if that plays in. I'm trying to see if that plays into it, because I do have a loss of community, and I do have a constant loss of home. What is home? I wonder if that plays into it. Oh my God. Who am I? Neil, what have you done?
I didn't mean to open up Pandora's box, but the other thing that was resonant through the books, I thought, was the theme of trust. Because in Animal Farm, there's so much trust that they have in the farm, and then they lose the trust. And they trust the pigs, and they lose the trust. The Amnesiac story is a lot about trust.
Yeah,
'Cause
who can you trust when you don't
It's like
remember?
literally her dad saying to her, "This is your boyfriend.
Yeah.
This is the guy you're friends with." And then that
That's
guy
so
tells
stressful.
her, "We kissed. You don't remember it, but I would like to be your boyfriend." Like, so there's all these trust issues as you navigate. And then, of course, All We Shall Know, the most recent book by Donnell. There's her husband walks out on her on the first page because she tells him that I'm pregnant.
She broke that trust in a big way.
So that's the other thing I sort of noticed. And I was wondering if that was something we go to books for, is they provide the edges of the frameworks within which we live.
Right. I think that trust is very important. And I'm very close with my family, and the friends that I have them so close to me because I trust them. That I find trust very important. And also, like, as a person who lives and works online, it's a very interesting relationship with trust, like, with privacy, like how much of your life you share online and how much you can trust your audience to respect that, or how are they going to react to that. So it's really important that I can trust the people around me.
Do you get recognized?
Yeah, in bookshops all the time.
Really?
It's actually a super funny kind of life where I don't get recognized anywhere other than bookshops or museums. I get recognized in museums a lot. But yeah, like in bookshops all the time.
Your people. That's where your people
That's
are.
where my people are. If anyone's going to watch me and they're going to be out in town, they're going to be in a bookshop. I think the coolest place I was recognized was in Shakespeare and Company in Paris. And I was like, I've made it. This is all I wanted in my life.
That's a nice transition. I know we've kind of explored these themes without kind of like hammering them or thumping them down into like flat spread out dough, but that's okay. That's part of what we do on the show is touch on these themes. The show is about books, but it's also about life. So we resonate with these bigger themes and we sit in them a bit, and that's great.
No,
but you mentioned
I'm going to think about a lot of things walking out of this talk.
Oh, me too, and I appreciate you giving that to me too. Now, you mentioned bookstores, so that's a nice transition to some of our closing questions.
Yay.
One of which is, what is your favorite bookstore, living or dead?
I'm glad it's not dead, because I'd be so sad. I'm so sad for people whose favorite bookshops have closed. That's tragedy. That's a true deep cut. My favorite bookshop, and I thought about this for a long time, is definitely 100% Foyles in London. So
How do you spell that?
Foyles.
Okay.
Foyles.
London, England?
Yeah. Not London, Ontario. Fair enough. Yeah. No, it's in London, England. It's a chain. It's an independent bookshop that's been around for a very long time. I want to say like 100 years-ish, but I could be wrong about that. But in that type of time frame, it's been around for a really long time. It's now opened up more locations, but the flagship store which is near Tottenham Court Road Station. It's the Charing Cross branch. You cannot miss it. It's freaking huge. It's my favorite bookshop in the entire world. And that was a very hard question for me to answer, Neil, because bookshops are my favorite place to be. I love spending time in bookshops. I go to bookshops as often as I can. When I move somewhere or before I move somewhere, it is the first thing I Google. I kid you not.
Well, how do you go on a certain website?
I just Google like Ottawa bookshops, Guelph, where I did my undergrad bookshops, etc. Books like
and then you go to all of them?
I visit all of
What
the
are you
bookshops.
looking for when you walk in? As
Just a vibe. I don't know. I
vibe.
cannot explain to you, but I'm looking for the right kind of vibe. I have a phobia. Is phobia when it's unexplained?
A phobia is just a fear of something.
A fear of something that is
like,
irrational?
So like arachnophobia is a fear of spiders.
Okay, perfect. I have a phobia of antiques. So
Antiques.
yeah, it's something I cannot explain.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to laugh.
No, it is hilarious.
No, I feel like I just judged you. I'm sorry.
No, but it's super dumb and it's irrational. And
don't say that.
No. I
understand that.
I have embraced that it's silly, and I've just like worked my life slowly around it. So used bookshops kind of give me that antique vibe. So I don't actually do that well in used bookshops, which is kind of a loss.
But this bookstore, Foyle, I looked it up while you were speaking, while trying to maintain eye contact.
Yeah.
Is founded in 1903.
1903. Okay, I was right.
You
It
were
is
right
over
about
100
that.
years.
And it was also listed in the Guinness Book of World Records as the world's largest bookshop in terms of shelf length.
Oh, wow.
Do you want to guess the number of miles or kilometers?
No.
30 miles.
That's incredible.
48 kilometers for number of titles on display. I'm assuming...
That it's big.
Yeah, and it says here, Foyles was famed for his anachronistic, eccentric, sometimes infuriating business practices.
Yes.
Like what?
Well, this was part of their history that has completely now changed and been modernized. But my boyfriend is from London, and so his parents lived in London, etc. When these bizarre things were happening, and he was telling me. So my boyfriend's dad was telling me that they just had a very bizarre payment system where you had to like get a book from a certain floor and then go to that floor's desk where they would give you a paper, and then you had to go to a different floor to get that paper approved, and then to a different area to pay.
You gotta be kidding me.
And it was just so complex and infuriating that a lot of people just like wouldn't pay or just would leave or etc. So it was really stupid. But now it's very modern. You can tap. You can use your phone to pay if you want. It is the most glorious bookshop. First of all, the vibe. The vibe is right. And I don't know what I mean by the vibe, but I do mean it. I strongly mean it. I love how it's very spacious and open. It's 6 floors. It's massive, but it is so well stocked. It has every section you want. The architecture is gorgeous. It's all like white and bright and lots of glass. You know what I mean? Like it's very modern and clean and
no
spacious.
antiques anywhere in sight.
There was no antiques, and thank God for that. And I just really, and there's lots of chairs, like areas to sit in, which is so important for me. I love Chapters just because we're in Canada and it's tried and tested and, reliable. It's everywhere. But I'm super mad at them for having removed chairs. Have you noticed that they've done this?
Oh.
So when I was a kid, and like a teenager, I would spend so much time in Chapters, and they would always have this particular wooden chair, and they were great. And then as I grew up, every Chapters that I ever visit, and I have visited a lot of Chapters, my friends, they removed the amount of chairs to the point where there's like, you can't really find chairs anymore. And I don't know why. Like they don't want people to sit and camp out. But that's the whole point of books, right? It's just sit and camp out and like get to know a book. And now recently the Chapters is like redoing a lot of their stores in Indigo, and I've noticed they're bringing chairs back. These are the things I care about in my life.
# bring back the chair.
Bring back the chair. But yeah, in Foyles, there's a lot of areas where you can sit, and they also have a cafe on the 6th floor. So it's
That
just
does sound a
beautiful.
bit also difficult to get to.
It's not. It's so good. It's so bright, and the elevators are glass, so you can see through. It doesn't feel claustrophobic at all. It's very open. I love that bookshop so much.
Foyles, okay, great. And how do you organize your books
Oh my God.
at home?
So it's a very complex system. I'm kidding. There's 3 important factors. Factor number 1, have I read it or have I not read it? So my main bookshelf is one of those big cube bookshelves from IKEA. So it's like a 5x5 cube. The top half The top 10 cubes are unread. The bottom 10 cubes are read.
Whoa.
So that's the first important differentiation. I like
Must be a big day when you get to move one from the top
It's
to the
a
bottom.
huge day.
Yeah.
It's the best day. It's also really difficult because the bottom half is full. So I'm having to like reshelve things and reshuffle, but I love that day. It's a very good day. But yeah, so part 1, read or unread. Part 2, genre. I like having my books divided by genre. And so authors that write in different genres, they get separated. I don't care about authors being together. I care more about having my science fiction in one section and having my young adult contemporaries in one section and dystopians in one section and classics are in one section, but then they are delineated between like dystopian class. I love dystopian classic books.
Like what?
Like 1984, like Brave New World, like Handmaid's Tale, like that kind of dystopian.
Maybe Animal Farm.
We by Evgeny Zamyatin, that's a great book, which is a total precursor to 1984, if you like 1984. But yeah, so I like having the genre breakdown. And then within that, it's just aesthetics. So like within genre, let's say I have 20 dystopian books. I will not do it like, I will not do like alphabetical or anything. I'll just do whatever looks prettiest.
Wow.
Because I like a good shelf aesthetic.
I love it's kind of like you're looking up a book thing, a combination of feel and data. Like you combine the data of have I read it or not by genre, and then suddenly it's feel at the end.
Then it's just like does what looks good. And I enjoy reshuffling my books. Like it is a true happiness to me to be able to be like, no, that blue is not working with that green. So I like move it and I'm like, that yellow, no. That's wrong. And I reshuffle just to make the spines look good.
Part of the reason I keep this question in the final of 3 books is because every single person I've asked so far has a different answer.
And they're passionate about it.
It's a really big question. Do you have a white whale book or a book you've been wanting to read the longest?
Yeah, I was thinking about this. No. So like, yes and no. I don't have one specific book that I'm like, how have I not gotten to this book yet? But I have a specific authors. And I think the one that comes to mind the most is Charles Dickens. I have somehow gone my entire life, my 2 English degrees, without reading Dickens. I don't know how I did that.
Well, if it makes you feel any better, Judy Blume said she's never read Jane Austen.
What the hell?
Well, no.
I'm shocked.
I know, but you know what's
That's
interesting is
very
that what I said to her, what I'll say to you is no book shame, no book guilt.
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
It's just the way
for
it is.
sure,
I
for
love that
sure.
she just said that, you know?
I
Never
love
read
that
Jane
too.
Austen.
That is very fascinating. For some reason, I would have thought she had. I don't know why, what that means, but no, I've read half of Hard Times, and it was great. And it made me want to read more, but I have never finished a Charles Dickens. And I have like A Christmas Carol, a really pretty puffin edition of it. And I have like Oliver Twist, but I haven't read it. So I just want to just read a complete Charles Dickens. That would be a nice goal.
See, I think the other thing that happens with these gigantic authors who we know have written tons of books and you haven't read any of them, like a Stephen King or Kurt Vonnegut or and Charles Dickens you mentioned, is Jane Austen. I haven't read any Jane Austen. Until last year, I hadn't read any Kurt Vonnegut. And everyone was like, what, can't you believe I can't read any Kurt Vonnegut? So I picked up Cat's Cradle. I did not like Cat's Cradle.
Oh.
And I said to people, I didn't really like it. And then people came on me. They're like, you read the wrong one.
Well, yeah.
You know, and so that, to me, that's the point I was trying to make with you. It's like, if you have an author where you know they've written a ton and you haven't read any, the really big decision is what's the gateway? Like, what is the entry point?
I agree.
And so for me, who've read not that many Charles Dickens books, but like 5.
That's a lot.
I would say the biggest entry point is Great Expectations.
Really?
And the reason I would say that is because he wrote it in, I guess,
Serialized?
serialized. So the end of every chapter is a hook.
Right.
It was like, it was before the current 200 years later, the current online trend of ending with the link to the next article or whatever. So at the end of every chapter, you're like, what's next? What's next?
That is
what's
good.
next? And it's like always a good dramatic hook.
Right.
You got to figure out who's the sister, what's the voice, what hand just touched his shoulder. You got to turn the page.
That's good.
He out Dan Brown's Dan Brown. So it's amazing.
Yeah.
Now, if I've gotten so much from this conversation already. We've totally geeked out about books, which is I so love. I love the big rant we went on about organization. And I got to do my little rant in Dewey Decimal, which I had never done before. Can you just, you are at the sort of forefront of this you're at the vanguard of like this new world, right? It's called booktubing. 81% of the people that I asked did not know what it was. Yet from your vantage point, it's huge. It's getting big fast. You have hundreds of thousands of followers. So do people in your ilk. So tell us what final word or two of advice or wisdom you would have for people listening who may want to get into the world that you are already successfully operating in. For aspiring booktubers, what's your piece or two of thought?
Okay, I thought about this, and it's so interesting because I've now been doing it for 7 years, so it's hard to remember exactly what would have helped me right at the beginning. But I think that's important because the community has really changed since I started, right? It was a lot different when there was 15 of us talking about books, and now that there's, I don't know, I have 138,000 subscribers, right? So that community versus the community I started with 100 people, etc. But here's 3 tips that I think will help. Tip number 1, read whatever the hell you want to read. This is so important. There's this feeling, I'm sure you've heard this. Have you heard that the most wanted profession in teenagers right now is YouTuber?
Oh, yeah, I have heard that. Yeah.
So
it was in the foreword of Gary Vaynerchuk's latest book.
Oh, really? Okay, that's cool. So yeah, teenagers want to be YouTubers. They see it as a legitimate profession. They see it as a possible career. It's self-employment, and it involves fame, which oddly all humans want. I understand. Like, I get that. As a person who works online, I understand that want to be bigger and have more people listen to you. I think it makes a lot of sense. But even though you might think that, like, and by you, I mean Neil, I mean listeners, might think that BookTube would be really noble. Oh, here we are just talking about books. Yeah, but you're talking about books to a possibly large audience. Like, that fame game still gets in your head. And because of that, you will instantly see that all of the bigger booktubers talk about young adult fiction as their main priority. And I can easily see, and I have seen, people who go out and buy or go to their library and lend all of these young adult books because you think that that's what you're supposed to read to be successful on BookTube. And I think that's crap. I think you need to read whatever the hell you want to read. And I think you need to, as long as you do it enthusiastically, people will listen. And I think that there are loads of channels out there that are testament to that. Channels that aren't young adult and that are doing really well. So don't bow to that reading pressure. Just read whatever makes you happy. Second tip is a practical tip. Film in front of a window. I know that, like, when you first start filming, it's hard to figure out what looks good and what is good and, like, what's a setup that you like. But I'm going to tell you right now, the most important thing is lighting. It's just really important that it's lit well and that you're not filming in, like, a dark basement or in a room where you've closed all the shutters.
So the window is behind the camera.
Yes.
And
so
the
you
light coming from the window is on your face.
Yes. The light should be shining onto you to give you the best possible lighting. And honestly, natural lighting will always outdo artificial lighting. It's just always looks prettier. So that sounds shallow, but it's not. Like, in a visual platform. Yeah. In a visual platform, you need the visuals to be in some way appealing.
You got to take care of that technical side. We do, like, all of these interviews in person. And I don't know what it is, but I feel like I get to see your body language. I get to, I can see when you're about to say something. And I also think it sounds better.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. So the visual aspect is really important. And my third and final tip is kind of a very specific to BookTube tip. And it is, don't film a review on the same day that you read the book, which you're oft want to do because you just read the book and you're full of passion and excitement and you have so many things to say. And the reason that I don't think you should film on the same day that you finish is because, oh my God, you will say too much. You will speak for such a long time because you have so many things to say. They're all fresh in your head that you will have a nightmare of editing. You're going to spend hours editing this footage because you said the same thing 4 times and because you got so excited that you went on 3 different random tangents that weren't important or necessary. So you should film as close to finishing as you can. You don't want to film like a month later because you will have lost that enthusiasm, but don't film on the same day. You'll go on way too much.
I love that.
That's a very practical tip for all the booktubers out there.
Ariel Bissett, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks so much for having me, Neil. It's been really fun.
Books are medicine. Books are places. As Ariel said in this chapter of 3 books, the whole point, I think, of BookTube is just enthusiasm. It's sharing your love and passion for reading that you can't normally do. I feel like in this chapter of 3 books, we kind of peeled back a whole new set of layers about books, what they offer, and I'm starting to feel like maybe like reading lover should be a little checkbox that we use to filter out potential guests on 3 books. Because I'm noticing it's like, yeah, you can talk to a writer, and writers are amazing. Writers are inspiring, right? But not every writer is a passionate book reading lover. I mean, they're passionate about writing, right? So I have to make sure, as I keep finding these inspiring guests that we can all listen to and learn from, I got to make sure that they all have this passion that Ariel has, to kind of get excited about the book, the same passion that Sarah Ramsey had in chapter 4. You know, the super palpable kind of reverence for the authors and the plots and the stories, because it gets me excited too. And hopefully it gets you excited. And that's what this is all about. Now, which 3 books did we talk about on this chapter? Well, we talked about, just as a reminder, here we go. We got Animal Farm by George Orwell, Memoirs of a Teenage Amnesiac by Gabrielle Zevin, Zevin or Zevin if you prefer, and All We Shall Know by Donnell Ryan. A fantastic collection of 3 books that I hope some of you will pick up and enjoy on your own. Thank you so much for listening to chapter 13 of 3 books. And now, if you've made it to this far in the podcast, I'd like to welcome you back to the End of the Podcast Club. This is one of 2 clubs we have for 3 books. The other one is only available, the entrance is only available by calling our phone number, 1-833-READ-A-LOT. That's 1-833-READ-A-LOT. And with that, let's start off this End of the Podcast Club by doing what we always do and going to the phones.
Hello, my name is Beatriz and I'm recording this message from Rio in Brazil. I've been following your work for quite some time now. Your countdown, awesome emails, your books, your monthly reading club. Over the years, I trained my reading skills, I learned a few cultural habits, and now I'm sharing my love for books with you in your new podcast. The audio really makes me feel as part of the conversation, and I love it. My favorite episode so far was the one with Sarah Ramsey, and visiting her bookstore is on my to-do list now. I lived in Toronto 10 years ago, and I'll visit again next November. Imagine the conversation you had with Dave Barry in Coral Gables Books and Books. A bookstore I've been to was also really entertaining. I could imagine the place, and that was an extra touch. A few weeks ago, I realized I couldn't be a part of the extra special podcast club, the one you need to get a password by phone to be a part. Because although being analogic has many advantages, the downside is that letters and phone calls are just not as good to keep those who live far as I do near. I can only hear your podcast because of technology. A phone call from Brazil to the US or Canada would be extremely expensive, and a toll-free number wouldn't work. This is why I got so happy when I heard the last episode. I was showing the podcast to my husband when you mentioned that a listener, me, told you about this problem by email. So this message on our audio recording, as you suggested, is just to say thank you for caring and adding this personal touch. When not even my bank has a human voice on the other end to answer my question, it's quite a surprise to have a return free of charge and full of interest. It's always good to have a fellow book lover as a companion on my long commute to work. So I look forward to the next full or new moon. Bye.
Thank you so much to Beatriz from Rio de Janeiro, our first kind of broad international call. You know, Beatriz, as she alluded to, emailed me and she said, Neil, I can't call 1-833-READ-A-LOT from Brazil. It's both too expensive and it doesn't work. The phone number just doesn't work.
So what we did is we called up our phone provider and we turned our phone number into an international phone number, meaning that you can call 1-833-READ-A-LOT now from anywhere in the world. You just dial 011 plus your country code plus 1-833-READ-A-LOT. The instructions on how to do that are available on 3books.co. If you go into FAQ, we've got instructions on how to do that. We threw a $500 deposit down on this, meaning that we're going to pay every time someone international calls us. You call us from India, you call us from Japan, you call us from Australia. We're going to pay for that phone call as best as we can. If it doesn't work, if it still doesn't work from wherever you are, you can do what Beatrice did and send us a voicemail. So just like record on your phone a little voice memo and just email to me, neil@globalhappiness.org, neil@globalhappiness.org. Now, Beatrice, thank you so much for calling. And I really appreciate it because you kind of got us thinking on how we can continue to broaden the listener base. I know you're out there, so if you're from more far away, please, please, please give us a shout. Now, it's time for reviews. You know what we always do? We always pick a review. Sometimes they're 5 stars. Sometimes I said, you know what? I want some critical ones. I think someone listened to me because I got this steamy critical review. I'm going to read it to you now. It came up on one of the iTunes around the world. Okay, here it is. As you guys know, by the way, in the first kind of trailer for 3 Books, I used this quote. It's like, I'm against like piles of books in the airport bookstore. Well, here's the review that came back. Hi, Neil. I work with an airport bookstore, and I just listened to your very first podcast episode and trailer. You say over 1,000 new books are published every day. You have no chance of finding the ones that will actually shape your values in the way you know a book can. So you grab whatever's in a big pile at the airport and chalk up your lack of interest to you. Well, Neil, congratulations on being someone that people go to discuss reading. Now, use that power wisely. It's convenient to use broad stereotypes to convey a lot of information in a few words, but that doesn't always tell the whole story. Conventional wisdom says that airports only carry Grisham and Clancy. But we have people in our stores that aren't necessarily frequenters of bookstores. Ours is more of a captive audience. You know, they're running from place to place, staring listlessly, flinging poo, she says. What captives typically do. And for them, we do have your run-of-the-mill potboilers, your lowest common denominator commercial titles, but we have so much more. An actual curated collection with thought behind it, crafted by actual human beings, not just an algorithm. Many airports have indie bookstores in them. Many airports have staff picks walls. We read, we discuss, we argue about literary merit, we gawp and wonder at a beautiful turn of phrase, we share intriguing passages, and we steer each other away from waste of time. Airport book is a handy shorthand, like the short bus. It paints a picture concisely. It says without actually saying, and there is some truth there, but not the whole truth. Make good use of your platform, Neil. Go beyond conventional wisdom. Ouch. I hear you. By the way, I withheld the name on this one purposely because in a back and forth, I reached out because it was sent to me as an email as well. And I reached out saying, can I read this? And she said, yes, but just please keep my name off. I do not want to be identified. So I left it off out of respect. But I hear you. You know, you're right. I guess I'm fighting against this sort of big pile in the airport, but I love the passion you have from your airport bookstore. And you make a good point. I can't just sweep in broad masses. So the question I want to leave everyone listening with is, what is your favorite airport bookstore? What is your favorite airport bookstore? What is an airport bookstore? This sort of disgusting, neon lit, overly trafficked, poo-flinging paradise, this disgusting place. What is your favorite haven inside the airport? What is your favorite, like, you know, little kind of den of kind of mind-opening wonder? I think for me, I'm going to throw one out there to get us started. It is probably Compass Books in the San Francisco International Airport, because there's a few of them in different terminals, and they're super well-stocked with staff picks. Like if you stare at a wall, there's a giant handwritten note below like every 4th book with somebody who's working in the store's passionate review about it. So anyway, I'm going to throw that one out there. But what is your favorite airport bookstore? Okay, moving on. I feel like I need to move on after that, but it was healthy to read that. It was therapeutic to read that, and I'm glad I did. And it's going to make me better. So thank you. Now, the word of the podcast. It is time for the word of the chapter. So let's go over to Ariel to listen to it.
the moment that this happens to her, she becomes completely ostracized. She is pariah. She is not welcome in the community anymore.
Yes, you heard it there. The word of the chapter is ostracize. Ostracize. O-S-T-R-A-C-I-Z-E, or Z-E if you prefer. Ostracize. The definition is to exclude from a society or group. Why did I pick this word? Because it's got a fascinating history. Listen to this. In ancient Greece, prominent citizens whose power or influence threatened the stability of the state could be exiled by a practice called ostracism. Voters would elect to banish other citizens by writing that citizen's name down on an ostrakon, O-S-T-R-A-K-O-N, which meant a shell or a potsherd. What's a potsherd? S-H-E-R-D, potsherd. It's like a cracked piece of a ceramic vase or a shell. So the origin of ostracism is actually this cracked shell that they used to write on because they didn't have Post-it notes in order to write your name. If your name got written on the shell, you were gone. You know, that's a big deal. By the way, as I keep looking into this word, I went to like a Wikipedia rabbit hole here. Ostrakon, that is also the root word of oyster. That's why oyster got that word, because it's also like a shell, like a piece of a clay pot or a vase. Fascinating. Now, I could have picked pariah, P-A-R-I-A-H, which has a similar definition of being kind of excluded from a society. And you would think, okay, pariah, where does that come from? Guess what? It is a 17th century Indian word, India, Sri Lanka, from Tamil, okay? From the Tamil people, because the origin word is pariah, P-A-R-A-I-Y-A-R. What does that mean? It means the drummer. It means the drummer. In the caste-based system, the drummer was not allowed to join in with the religious procession. In Tamil, there was this large drum designed to announce the king's notices to the public, and people who made a living using the pariah were called the pariah. Okay? They were in the lower strata. The drummers were below everybody else. It was so hilarious. I'm thinking the drummer, the guy leading the parade, to me, that's the best guy, right? Like that's the best guy. But no, he's cast away. He's a lower caste. He's just the drummer. Kind of makes me think of the original Jen Sincero book. You know, Jen Sincero, she wrote, "You Are a Badass." That's probably what she's best known for. But if you go into her oeuvre or whatever, her history, her first book is called "Don't Sleep with Your Drummer." Like literally, don't sleep with the pariah of the band. Anyway, it makes me think that I want to get more pariahs on this show. Because after chapter 8 with Sarah Anderson, where we talk about, so you've been publicly shamed, people that have been cast out of society and they're looking at us from the outside looking in, like those people probably have a fascinating perspective. So in addition to making sure that I get like pure book reading lovers or book lovers, I also want to make sure people, I want to get a couple pariahs. Do you know a pariah who would talk to me on 3 books? And are they inspiring for one or another reason? Who can we get? Who can we get on the show? Give me a pariah. I want a pariah or more than one pariah on 3 books. So, shall we close it off here? We went on a long walk, didn't we, there? We talked about fighting for independence in the echo chamber, choosing books with data versus kind of the randomness of finding one in a Piccadilly Circus bookstore. We talk about booktubing and what that means. How do we create trust online in an era where we've all, in some ways, lost trust or are losing trust, where trust is kind of at an all-time low? I absolutely loved the conversation with Ariel Bissett, and I really appreciate you sticking with me all the way to the end of the podcast where we got to talk 101 to each other back and forth. And until next time, until the next full moon or the next new moon, remember, you are what you eat and you are what you read. Thank you so much for listening.